You know, it's been a while since we did a proper tearing down of a ship on this channel, which is after all how this channel got started. So why don't we go back to our roots for a moment? Almost exactly one of your orbits ago, a movie was released that was supposed to rival Blade Runner in its mind-blowing examination of what makes humanity humanity and what makes intelligence intelligence. It had a budget of $80 million, which I guess in comparison to certain disasters isn't that great, but the visual effects were absolutely stunning. The music was by none other than Mr. Pirates of the Caribbean himself. The director and writer was the director for the best Star Wars movie ever. And they rounded out this collection with some pretty big names to play most of the characters. It should have been epic. And don't get me wrong, it was beautiful. But then it just disappeared. No memes, no significant cultural impact, no nothing. Blade Runner 2049 had a bigger footprint than this movie did, although it did get a lot of awards for its visual graphics. Understandably, it was, as I said, beautiful. But it was a massive flash in the pan. And for those of y'all who haven't put it together quite yet, yes, in just a few moments, we will be talking about the Nomad from Creator. Any ship left on the dock for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Welcome to Sacred Cow Shipyards. Now, for those of y'all who do not know the story of the movie, and I don't particularly blame you if you don't, it's the same basic premise of every single artificial intelligence adjacent movie that has ever been made on your planet, basically. Your humans, specifically the USAians, built some global defense AI that turned around and nuked Los Angeles for reasons that no one appears to care about or dig into or mention in the movie whatsoever. And thanks to this, the USAians are perhaps understandably biased against artificial intelligence entities and engage in a decades-long war against them. The AIs, who are basically robots, just, really, really smart, and some of them wear human faces, they came by it completely politely. The people volunteered to have their faces scanned, and then prosthetics were placed over the robotics' heads, although you could still see these massive gaps in their heads, so the fake humans, the AIs with human faces, were very solidly in the uncanny valley for you squishies, which makes you really wonder why they were doing this to begin with. I mean, ostensibly it was to blend in, but you can't really do that with a massive hole through your noggin. Regardless, the USAians do what they do best and engage in a long-standing war against the AI, who are mostly holed up in the southeastern Asian region of your globe. And in order to, I guess, prosecute this war, they build Nomad. Nomad is naturally an acronym, which I guess is where the complaint shall start. It stands for North American, Orbital, Mobile, Aerospace, Defense. What? I mean, I guess if you just drop the American part entirely and remove the commas, it makes a certain degree of sense. But, that was very much an acronym in search of an expansion as opposed to the other way around. And naturally, in true Orwellian fashion, it is predominantly not used for defense. It mostly hovers over, again, the southeastern Asian section of your globe, and drops missiles on clusters of AIs wherever it finds them. Which, yes, the USAians rationalize as defense because they are, quote-unquote, defending themselves from what they perceive to be an AI threat, except these little buckets of bolts just want to live out their existences without being, nuked. Small details. And the aerospace part, well, that actually is highly accurate, totally correct. This damn thing cannot decide from one moment to the next whether it is a spaceship or an airship or... It never really lands as far as I can tell, so at least it's not a ground vehicle, and it doesn't seem to submerge or float, So it's not an aquatic vehicle, but it just randomly transitions from, high orbit to, oh, look, it's below the clouds, whenever the story needs it to, I guess. It has no visible forms of propulsion, so I'm assuming you humans have figured out gravitic technology by this point in your timeline. The other vehicles in the movie do seem to have something akin to repulsors, given the police delivery system in whatever city that was in Southeastern Asia. So I guess that tracks, but why would you do that? Transitioning from any orbit to below clouds requires a significant chunk of energy. Now, I mean, there's a significant chunk of energy required in just keeping that darn thing aloft, but still, if it's in orbit, although technically it never really stays in one place or one orbit for very long, hence the ha-ha name. So I guess it's just powering itself around no matter what. So I guess you're not burning any more energy than you would otherwise. You're still putting undue stress on the space frame or airframe or whatever you want to call it, just by repeatedly doing that. And speaking of undue stresses, can we talk about how absurdly large this stupid thing is? I mean, they did not make any attempt to make it compact at all, which may play into its gravitic drive system. I don't actually know, but it is really, really wide, but really, really short and really, really not tall. I mean, I would say that that's just a massive flex or something on the part of the USAians to be able to build something this big, except like the center section, the ring that's kind of the prominent part of the Nomad is kind of the magazine for, I don't know, missiles about the size of your old space shuttle's external fuel tank. They were not small, and they did go boom quite nicely, especially in the atomic modes. Apparently they came in both conventional and atomic payloads, so yay flexibility. But still, the ring that kind of holds these two massive wings together is the magazine for the missiles with all their fuel and explosives and nuclear bombs. Now, the good news is that apparently it has the best self-defense network available to humies in that time period. Assailing it from the ground is functionally impossible, so the AIs just learn to live with this massive thing hovering over their heads. Now, apparently that hovering, looming aesthetic was deliberate on the part of the director Gareth Edwards. He envisioned it as kind of like a bird of prey hovering on the winds with that head looking down, looking for prey, basically. Which, again, also explains the peculiar laser grid targeting system that the Nomad uses. I don't even know what that's supposed to be. It might be sensors sweeping for AIs. It might be the targeting system for the missiles, but I don't think I ever saw a missile hitting where the grid was when the grid was on that particular spot. The grid swept over that area, then it launched a missile, and then it went back and took out that area, of course, but I guess it would be sensors then. But apparently the laser grid system, which, by the way, you can hear, because, lasers are audible, yep, totally. All of that was apparently because he and the concept artist for Rogue One, Matt Alsop, tried to sneak into Area 51 in the USAian province. Now, I don't know how much y'all know about that particular facility at that particular location. I will tell you that a lot of the stories are probably overblown, but I will also tell you that security there had their sense of humor surgically removed. And apparently, one of the times they tried sneaking over a mountain into the facility or something, because, yeah, totally, Area 51 of all places doesn't have a very clear picture of every single thing around them. The security team displayed a laser grid pattern on the ground in front of them. Now, I'm not going to say what that is. I could hypothesize, technically. But apparently that was a lasting impression on Gareth, and he decided to implement it in the Nomad targeting system. I get it. It's kind of spooky to see the laser tracking across the countryside and whatnot and all that nonsense. But really? Now we're dipping back into the aesthetics over content problem that pretty much plagues this entire movie. I mean, for the great maker's sake, the Nomad is literally so large that it has hydroponics farms on board that are huge, quite large. Why? Humies have single stage to the moon craft. They have spaceports where you can buy a ticket and fly directly to the moon. No stages, no handoff, no nothing. They just go there. If spaceflight is that cheap, you're wasting space on a spaceship for a farm. Oh, sure, it makes you food and makes you that oxygen stuff you need to breathe and all. That's fine, but you could still probably just bring it up cheaper and use that space for something else. Opportunity costs, yo. And then on top of that, there is a lab on board the Nomad for researching artificial intelligence. What? So hold on. You built this whole thing to annihilate AI. A little psychotic if you ask me, but fine. You have a deep-seated fear of AI. Okay, whatever. And this thing is like the most powerful weapon on or off the planet right now. Okay? And you're going to bring the very thing you fear, the very thing that can take this thing over, onto it to research it. Because that makes total sense. But maybe that's why the movie's not overly remembered. Or maybe it is, and maybe I'm just misjudging your species. I mean, from my perspective, it didn't do anything particularly groundbreaking. Okay, the AI look like you. Welcome to Blade Runner. There are massive, towering cyberpunk cities. Welcome to Blade Runner. There are flying cars! Blade Runner. I'll give them that the USAN tanks were pretty large, but they pale in comparison to a Shiva, much less a Bolo. So, okay. Oh no, the AI made a tiny human! Well, tiny AI, I guess, but whatever. Okay, how do you know it's going to grow up? Does it age? Does it grow? Does it... I mean, obviously the processor inside of it can grow and expand and so on and so forth, but that is literally the definition of artificial intelligence, not the term that's being misused for your large language learning models or whatever the fornication the appropriate acronym is actually expands to. But AI is literally the emulation of what your brains go through, but artificially. And either all of the AIs running around are not actually AIs, in which case, okay, fine, the kid is something of a notable exception. Or there was nothing particularly special about the tiny robot child thingy, aside from its ability to apparently generate localized EMPs, which, all granted, is pretty cool, except apparently they didn't affect the AIs. How's that work? But hey, if you like the movie, I certainly can't stop you from liking it. Nomad's still dumb, though. And that's all from Sacred Cow Shipyards. Please be advised that any ship left on the docks for more than 24 hours will be compressed to a cube at the owner's expense. Have a nice day.